What's going on, y'all? Just Haley here, and I am back again with another video. Now today's video is going to be a little bit of a fun one for me because it's Garuda. And I love Garuda. She's a really fun frame. I love her theme. I love her kit. The biggest issue for me with her has always been that trying to use her claws just feels a little bit frustrating because you have to remove your melee to get to claws, and for most content in the game that just doesn't feel very good. Combine that with some of the bugs that are currently going on with Exalteds, where they don't benefit from things like anabolic pollination, which is really frustrating because absolutely that would take this build to a whole new level. But, you know, here nor there, right? Let's show you guys the build that I came up with. It's two of them for Garuda, and there's a little bit of flexibility, but there's a ton to talk about. So I don't want to waste too much time before we get right into it. Starting off as we always do with Subsumes. Now Garuda honestly has some really great Subsume options, but I think the best synergy with her kit is Nourish. So let's start with that one. Nourish is a really good option because it has the energy multiplication for whenever you get energy. That works with bloodletting. That's going to feel really good. It's going to make it so you can run blind rage and not care about the reduced efficiency that normally would reduce how much energy you get back, despite sacrificing half your health and that cost staying a fixed cost. So that's pretty cool. And it does allow her to stack up a little bit more power strength, which is also again going to buff up that Nourish. Going to feel really good, as well as it's going to buff up the multiplier for whenever she's using her one to throw out that meatball to do a ton of damage. Also, you're getting viral, which is going to be fantastic for slash viral on her claws, on her weapons, and just in general. It's going to be really good. And then all of that combining with her extra damage that she's dealing, it's going to feel really, really nice. That's a multiplier from her damage passive. It's a way to make her do a ton of damage as a weapon platform. It's going to feel really good. And again, you're still getting all of the ability damage. And this is another little side benefit. Nourish also will apply at a chance, obviously, on all of the shards from her force. You can see the viral proccing here, but also it'll apply when she throws her meatball to enhance that damage too. So all of that's really, really nice to just combine as a really, really good catch-all for really making Garuda do some crazy numbers. Now, it comes at a cost of you're not enhancing her survivability that much, so you have to solve that in other ways, and we're going to be doing that in this build. Now, while no other ability is going to synergize quite as well with Garuda's entire kit as Nourish does, you can get a similar effect from Eclipse. Obviously, you won't get the energy benefit, you won't get the viral status, but you will get the extra damage. It's a multiplier in that case on the 1. You'll get the extra damage on her 4. That's pretty nice, and you'll also get the extra weapon platform type idea. That's going to be pretty cool. So if you wanted to do Eclipse, that's an option. There's also Roar that you could do for all the extra status, for all her slash. It's going to feel really good there. Breach Surge has some cool synergies and stuff like that, but the one that I am going to be showing in the second build is actually Null Star. Now, Null Star is going to be a way to get her up to 75% damage reduction. Kind of solves that survivability issue, but also she can stack a bunch of power strength, allowing you to spread out the Neutron Star augment heat, as well as the blast damage from Neutron Star. It's going to feel really good. Just a really sizably strong amount of CC, amount of damage, that kind of stuff. Just synergizes really well with her kit. It actually ended up being my preferred, I think, build overall for her. But let's get right into the first build, and then I'll start talking about how it all works together, because it is pretty unique and pretty fun in how it works, because it is just a very specific Garuda build. Only she could do something like this. Now this build is a kind of throwback to how Garuda used to run. I used to love running Quick Thinking on her, keeping her at low health, and then benefiting from her passive. She doesn't need to do that anymore, but I still really like Quick Thinking on her. I think she can get a ton of energy, which is really nice. The other benefit is that when you do slap yourself twice down to 1 health, you won't die to toxin procs right away. It's pretty cool. And because she can stack a bunch of armor through both shards, as well as a triple Umbra setup, which benefits her, you're going to have a lot of fun with this. Now, normally for Garuda, I actually would really avoid Vitality, but I was running Molt Reconstruct on her. For those that don't know what Molt Reconstruct does, it makes it so that you get 6 health per energy spent on abilities back as extra health, right? This also affects your teammates, which is cool because you get a little bit of support on what is otherwise a very selfish frame, so that feels really nice. But the real benefit here is also that on Garuda, after you use your bloodletting, you can double that value, which is even stronger. What that means is that you are getting full heals off of using your 4 that is also an iframe, and that's going to allow you to fully heal yourself, which you then use your bloodletting to sacrifice health to fill energy. Energy counts as health because of quick thinking, and it's a nice little cycle there that works really, really well. But we are going to want a high health pool, a high energy pool, and high armor, and that's how you end up with a build that looks something like this. With all the armor that we're running, battery just makes sense because it's going to give us the extra energy that's going to make it feel even smoother at that high end, getting about 600 energy from that. It's going to feel really good. And then again, if you wanted to drop adaptation, or if you wanted to change one of your augurs in for augur message, that's up to you. Augur secrets is going to feel really good. Augur reach is going to make your meatball do a little bit more damage, which is going to feel really nice. That's up to you. Go with what you want. If you combine the augur reach and a cunning drift, you're going to feel really nice there too, because that's going to get you that 45% range. And usually about a 15-meter range is enough for me to think that that meatball is going to clear most of a room for like a hallway kind of thing in practical usages. So that's going to feel really nice. It's going to feel really easy. It's going to feel really simple, and it's going to work really well for those ability nuking kind of things that Garuda can do. However, that is a lower time to kill, and it's a little bit slower for her, which does tend to mean that she struggles on those solo survivals. Again, however, that is a very effective way to run her for anything that's not damage attenuation, and then you can just break out the claws for the damage attenuation. It's going to feel really, really simple. Now, speaking of the claws, we are going to be running a pretty basic melee influence build. What we're going to be doing is obviously Weeping Wounds, Blood Rush. We're going Galvanized Steel for that extra crit, because I do have some decent crit. We want Condition Overload. We want the Prime Pressure Point, Prime Fury, Voltaic Strike. But if you want to drop Prime Pressure Point for a faction mod, go for it. If you want to drop it for Organ Shatter, go for it. That's up to you. I personally am always going to side with the Prime Pressure Point for laziness, but it's up to you. I find that sometimes it's a little bit hard to build combo depending on how difficult the enemies are until a bit later in missions. So with that in mind, throwing on a Prime Pressure Point can just make things feel even easier, and you'll just breeze through that early content rather than being annoyed that you're not getting the combo, therefore not getting influence and stuff like that as easy. Now, the key benefit to this build is you are going to be able to run Nourish, which is going to feel really nice, really complements her kit, and you're going to get a ton of damage out of that. Feels really good, but honestly the time to kill wasn't great, and you know, it's a little bit wonky with it, right? Like, you can use a lot of fun things with her. You get to utilize her kit and feel really, really fun and have a lot of fun jumping around and leaping and stuff like that. Keep in mind that you don't need Prime Sure-Footed, because as long as your Dreadmere is up, you have a Prime Sure-Footed effect on Garuda, so that's really important. Make sure you keep your Dreadmere up, but it does go down whenever you throw it, so that's another caveat kind of there. But she also has an iframe whenever she is charging her for that initial charge, so that's really strong too. Now, the main thing here is that after a certain point, she does end up getting one shot, which feels a little bit bad. Once enemies get to about level 1000 or so, you're going to get one shot. Whenever you hear a Blitz Eximus charge up, make sure you're in your 4 and you're going to be fine. It's a really, really easy read and react kind of scenario there. Outside of that, it's really, really easy to stay alive on Garuda because of the build that this is. You're getting about 87% damage reduction from armor, which, just to keep in mind, is coming at least in part from our armor shards that we're running. Now, we're running 4 armor shards, 1 cast speed. Cast speed is luxury. You could technically do another armor shard, but I don't think it would be super useful. It'd probably be better to do health if you don't care for the cast speed shard. That's up to you. I like it specifically for just kind of some of her animations that you do use a lot, especially bloodletting. Speeding those up just feels really, really nice to me. Now, you could think, oh, well, we should do energy instead, but you actually only get 30 more energy while sacrificing 900 armor. The armor's really nice. It takes you up an extra 7%, 7.6% damage reduction, which is going to feel really good. So I like that a lot in this build. It's also not reds. I'm always really down bad for reds, so for me, this was a really cool option because Garuda doesn't need that much more power strength, so this was a way to get around that and just use a ton of a different idea and give her some more tankiness, some more value from battery, and a lot of extra ways she could build that are just really fun and very specific to Garuda, and used some blue shards that honestly were burning a hole in my pocket otherwise, so for me that felt really comfortable and really fun. But we do have one other build that I think is arguably more fun, but also uses the same shards and does feel really cool. You could even, if you wanted to, flip it to some red shards for even more power strength, but that's up to you and some experimenting you might want to do. So with this other build, as mentioned, we are going to be using Null Star. Now, I really like the Null Star build. It was a little bit more spammy. It hurt my hand. For those who don't know, I have nerve damage in my hand, so it does hurt quite a bit to get really spammy things going on in frames, and especially Garuda, spamming 2, spamming 3, spamming 1, and using 4. All of that's a lot. The other thing that I shifted here is I'm not using the claws anymore. The reason I'm not using the claws is because I wanted to show more value out of the Predasite that I'm running, and anabolic pollination doesn't work on the exalted weapons right now. So it feels bad, but we do what we can, and hopefully it gets patched in the future. Instead, I opted to run my Arm Spinoza, which you can see on the gameplay here. Now for this, we're going to be again running that Brief Respite with our Reconstruct combo. It's going to be a really good way to get us a ton of tankiness, a ton of survivability. Quick thinking comes into the build as well, obviously. We do instead opt for an Archon Vitality to double up on those heat procs and run Neutron Star here. It's going to be pretty fun for this because we are going to be able to get quite a bit of damage out because of it. It's pretty cool. We also run a Prime Continuity, which is going to be cool, and Transient Fortitude, just to give us a little bit of that power strength back, because now we are only at that 210%. And then Cunning Drift, just for that little bit of range. I couldn't really fit more range here if I wanted to. Potentially you could drop something like Neutron Star, but then you're kind of losing the main benefit of Archon Vitality. Yada yada, it's up to you. If you wanted to drop duration, you could a little bit, I suppose. It's just a hard build to fit everything in if you wanted range, but keep in mind that whenever you press your Null Star, you are doubling the range of the seeking Null Stars, so it's not going to matter too much when it comes down to it. Grand scheme, it's not a huge deal. The explosion will get a benefit from range, but for the most part, the heat procs are what you're looking for. It's a little bit of armor strip, as well as a nice thing for your Predasite to be able to spread around with its contagious bond. So what this build lacks in damage compared to Nourish, it makes up for in survivability. Survivability on this build is going to be because it's getting 75% damage reduction through having at least 8 Neutron Stars. Now what that means is essentially as long as you have 8 shards, you have an extra 75% on top of your 50% on shields, on top of your constant shield gating, on top of your constantly refilling health pool, on top of your crazy energy pool that gets even larger whenever the mecha mods trigger from your Predasite, which, keep in mind, if you wanted to flex in some of the mecha mods into the build, you could lose Neutron Star, you could debatably drop something like Transient Fortitude if you didn't care about the power strength as much. There are some options here for something you could potentially do for a better mecha set if you wanted to, just as a pointer. But all of this comes together to make a very, very tanky build that can cycle its shields, make sure they're constantly regenning, can completely rebuild its health pool whenever it needs to, just by pressing its 4, which is also an iframe. If it gets toxin procced, you have a huge health pool, so it's not just a one-shot, not just the health, but also the energy, and an iframe in the 4 again that you can just hold out to wait out a toxin proc. All of that comes together to make a build that's very solid for Steel Path, ETA, EDA, stuff like that. And it's going to be really good for those endgame type of missions where you're trying to be survivable, but also be able to dish out a ton of damage with your weapons. Any influence weapon is going to synergize really, really well here because you're going to be able to amplify those slash procs. Now, while they're not as strong as they used to be, they're still pretty good, and you can still make them do some really crazy things when you're just adding slash to a bunch of weapons, adding, damage that you can just multiply off of enemy health and then stack up really easily. All of that works really, really well, especially on the tile sets that you're doing for EDA and ETA. The Meatball that she throws feels really, really good on those tile sets, nuking anything that's not damage attenuation, which is really cool. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't explain a little bit about how this all works. Essentially, Garuda can use her bloodletting to sacrifice health for energy. She then counters that by using Reconstruct to sacrifice energy for health. She builds a decent health pool because of that. While I normally wouldn't recommend health on Garuda when you're running Reconstruct, it's fine because you're building it back so quick. It doesn't matter that you're sacrificing it, so that's fine. You keep your Dreadmere up so that you keep a prime sure-footed effect and you can't be CC'd so long as that stays up. You can also use it to execute some of those damage attenuation targets, such as things like Dedicants. Really, really easy to deal with Garuda because you can just execute them once they hit 40% health, so that's pretty cool too. All of this comes together to create a really, really cool loop where you're constantly sacrificing energy for health, sacrificing health for energy, have a ton of armor, a ton of damage reduction, a ton of ways to just mitigate, including an iframe on the 4, and that's all going to stack up to be very, very strong, especially when you combine it with the Pharaoh Predacite. Now, while as mentioned, the anabolic pollination doesn't synergize with those exalted weapons right now, hopefully it gets patched, and it will, so I'm going to be putting this out in the hopes that it does. I love that mod. It's going to be 100% toxin damage whenever you step in the little cloud that the Pharaoh Predacite drops, which is pretty much all the time. It's nearly always up. It is so, so, so strong. We're also going to be running the Momentous Bond. That's mostly to get the Predasite back, as well as add damage to the Predasite. Contagious adds damage to the Predasite. Mecha Recharge is going to be for that Mecha set. Prime Pack Leader is for the survivability. Hunter Recovery, you can opt this out if you want to. Synth Deconstruct is really nice. I like it a lot. Enhanced Vitality feels really good just to get that extra health just in case. Fetch, kind of mandatory, and then Tandem Bond, again, you're going to be adding that damage. For the claws, we're going to be going Bite, Cull the Weak, Magnetic Claws, Burning Claws, Immunity Resistance, Mecha Override, Precision Conditioning, and Maul. Now Bite, kind of optional here, but I like it because especially as you're adding in everything else, it's pretty easy to get at least some crits here, and if you don't get crits, it's not a huge deal either way, but there's also a huge crit multiplier on the claws, so you might as well run it just in case. All of this is going to come together to make the Pharaoh Predacite kind of shred through enemies for the most part. I really like Pharaoh Predacites. It's one of my favorite hounds, flesh pets in general to use. I really like being able to use them. They're a lot of fun. They do a ton of damage. As long as you're meleeing with your frame, they're going to be really easy to keep alive with Prime Pack Leader. So that feels really good. And the ability for them to just occasionally pop an entire group of enemies, an entire floor of enemies, especially if you run a full mecha set, it's going to feel really nice. You could opt to do that with Garuda. She does synergize with it very well, but that's up to you. I personally couldn't really sacrifice the mods, but I might play around with that and go back and forth in full transparency, because I do think mecha sets are very fun to run. However, if you're running them with a team, keep in mind that if your team kills your mecha marked target, they'll get your armor instead of you, and that feels kind of bad. Weapon recommendations with Garuda, honestly anything with AoE is going to feel really good. Anything that spreads statuses really well is going to feel really good. Weapons in general should just be way stronger with Garuda. Her passive is that 100% multiplicative damage. It stacks with your things like Roar and faction mods as well, which is going to feel really good. It's a very strong modifier, very strong passive, and it's so easy to upkeep on her that it's not even funny. It's pretty much a guaranteed damage increase for her, which is really cool. I love being able to use that because that's going to be a great way to add a ton of damage to kits and a ton of damage to weapons that otherwise might fall off a little bit earlier, so you can use more things, different things, and have a little bit more fun. It's just a lot of fun to be able to run with Garuda in general. She's a really fun frame, especially with that. Now it's going to add more damage to her meatball and stuff too, which is going to feel really cool, so you can make really fun little nukes of hallways whenever you have a nice little group lined up for you, or just keep stacking it up until you get damage cap with it, and that's fun too. Roughly, you're always going to want to throw on the nourish build before you hit about 100 million worth stacked up. Otherwise, it can sometimes just eat your damage and decide that you didn't get the throw off. And that sucks a little bit, but it used to brick games and it would kick you out of missions and stuff from time to time if you overcapped damage too hard with it, to the point that you can still do this, but your damage usually gets eaten by the game and just disappears. It eats the meatball for you, where it will do that E to the 19th scientific notation on the damage. So if you ever want to test that, it's very easy to do in the Simulacrum or on the Dante tile set, because the Murmur have pretty high health pools to be able to stack that up very quickly. Now, all that ramble out of the way, honestly, Garuda's a really fun frame. This build was really fun, and I really did enjoy making it. She's a very specific, very intricate frame that gets to use a very unique build, and I think that's super cool. I've taken her to EDA a couple times. I haven't taken her to ETA yet, but it honestly should be easier than anything, because those health tank builds work really well in ETA because of all the gas damage that's there. Especially with the adaptation build on Nourish, you should be able to adapt to a lot of the damage there and feel pretty safe and pretty comfy. But bows are honestly very much a cakewalk for Garuda with this build, so that feels really cool too. So ETA should be absolutely simple with a build like this. Bring a decent melee and you're going to be okay. And honestly, at this point in the game, any melee can be a decent melee if you just kind of put on an influence and kind of fall asleep. But that's a whole different video, I think. Overall, this build was a lot of fun. I definitely strongly recommend it. If you guys check it out, please let me know what you think. As always, leave a like, comment, subscribe. It helps the video out a ton. It helps me out a ton. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. You've been amazing. I've been Just Haley. And until next time, remember that I love your faces. Bye-bye.